Hello, everybody. This is Gregory. Welcome to one of my rare live streams. I used to do live streams more in the past where I would interview random lay Catholics. I just haven't done them recently, and I need to do them more, even if a lot of people don't show up live. Let me see if the light's better, actually, if I turn off the light here. Yeah, it's about the same. Now the light's coming out too bright of the window. Let me see. It's okay. Hope you guys are doing well today. I thought it would be fun to go and look at some ugly Catholic churches and lament the fact that our beautiful Catholic churches that were once beautiful, many of them have gone the way of not being as pretty. Also, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to call in. If you have a comment, if you're Catholic or if you're non-Catholic, if you have an earnest question about the Catholic faith, you're more than welcome to ask about that, and we can talk about that or whatnot. I really don't like this light coming in. Let me turn the camera one more time. My apologies. My lack of professionalism. Let's have the piano in the back here. I'm not sure where the light's coming in for the mirror though. That's even worse. Where's that light coming from? It's like an angel behind me. All right, this seems a little better. Okay. So I wanted to show some pictures of really ugly Catholic cathedrals. Now, or churches and regular churches and cathedrals? What's the point of this? It's not to malign Holy Mother Church in any way, shape, or form. It's to lament how we veered away from the kind of basilica style of architecture that was very common, really going back to when Constantine the Great legalized Catholic Church in 313 AD, and we were able to move into public spaces, and either Constantine, through his patronage, or rich Christians at the time, bought basilicas, buildings that we later turned into public churches. Now, prior to that, during the Decian, Diocletian persecutions, and certainly persecutions going back, the persecutions of the ancient times were not always universal, consistent, and universal, meaning that in every part of the Roman Empire at all. So it was like some places it was more heavily persecuted than others. Typically in the cities it was more persecuted, and it was sporadic. It wasn't always. But either way, when he legalized Christianity, he didn't make it the official language. That didn't happen until later in the 4th century, not by him. We were able to move into buildings. And so the basilica style of architecture is what you would consider to be the classic style of architecture. There is like an atrium in the front, and then you have the long transept. And then you have many times on either side of the main long part, you'll have like little side ones that looks like the shape of a cross. And then going down the main long part of a church, you would have later on in High Gothic, when the architecture supported it, you would have stained glass. Right? And later on, you would have a lot of stained glass. You would have a lot of statuary. You would have the tabernacle. Behind the altar. Of course, the altar was against the wall because we did everything ad orientem at the time. It was only after really Vatican Council II that it was encouraged to not do ad orientem. Though ad orientem was not outlawed by Vatican II, It's just the mindset was let's change up the altar. So we got rid of the altar rails in many churches, not all churches. We got rid of the altar rails, and receiving by the hand became the custom. And sadly, the pop music, or I like to call it the Joan Baez rock pop, the Bob Dylan pop rock, became the norm during this time. And what you saw, and I think it's best chronicled in a book by Michael Rose called Ugly as Sin. What happened in the second third of the, I guess, the third of the 20th century, so after Vatican II mostly, how a lot of parishes, a lot of dioceses, started to hire Protestant architects. And so the mindset became less of let's make it a sacred space and more of let's just make it a multi-use state, multi-use room. And so what you saw was a lot of the accoutrement of Catholicism being taken out of churches and making the churches more bland, less offensive to Protestants, and more Protestant. And so you saw the stained glass as a whole. And then, again, these are churches that were built, and you're typically in the suburbs of America. So you saw churches that would remove the stained glass, or they put in like the element stained glass or the weird abstract stained glass where it doesn't look like anything. Sometimes you'd see wind or fire or something amorphous. And then the statuary was taken away. Lots of times you would go to the kind of circular approach. And the circular octagonal kind of architecture was very Byzantine. You can go to some of the churches in the eastern part of I guess, Eastern Mediterranean. You would find that architecture. So the octagonal shape was more in fashion in the Byzantine architecture of the 7th, 8th, 9th century. Think of Justinian. So that's not necessarily innovative. It's innovative for the Latin side. But you definitely see now in many churches the altar being put in the middle, and so people can see across each other, which leads to distractions. And as I mentioned, the tabernacle is put in a closet or in another room. And so it's just really unfortunate that you see this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to my Instagram channel called Catholic or Protestant. And if you want to follow here, we play a little game here every day where I post a picture of a church and you have to tell me if it's Protestant or Catholic. Mainline Protestant. So I try to, the churches that look very Protestant, many times people guess is Catholic. And then the ones that are really abstractly ugly in the modernist architecture, most people can guess are Catholic. But there is a link. I'll put a link here. And there's a link in the episode notes of every episode that I have here. But we're going to screen share so we can go over and look at that. So you can see some of the more grotesque, I would say, forms of modernist architecture. Okay, so here is Catholic or Protestant. About 100 postings here. So these are the most recent ones. Look at this one. Look at this one. It's like an airplane. This is a Catholic church in India. That's the inside. It's an outdoor, looks like an outdoor one. But let's go to the more like the classic, really hideously ugly ones. And let me scroll down here. Of course, I should have done this earlier. My apologies. Just close your eyes. Pretend you're not seeing. Okay. So this right here, I would say, is very classic suburban Catholic. In that there's nothing really super Catholic on the outside. In the old days, it would be a very large spire, and there would be a crucifix, and there would be something. But notice the multi-purpose use. And going back to the multi-purpose use, so reading Ugly as Sin, the point was to make the sanctuary be used for meetings, be used for concerts, classical music concerts. How many of you have a parish that they bring on the slide projectors, and maybe we'll show a video at the end of Mass, maybe for volunteering or donating to some charity, or they'll bring the slide projectors down to project the words because they don't want to have a missalette, or they want the words to be up on the wall, kind of like the Protestants. And so that's kind of the multi-purpose use. So you see the exterior demonstrated as well, where a lot of these churches have the exterior look very non-Catholic, almost to the point. And this is what I would tell you is intentional. This one right here is one in outside of Dallas. It looks like a teepee. Now, on the outside, not too bad. But look at the inside. Altar in the middle, portable chairs. You can take them out to do some sort of meeting. I mean, this church, God bless them, but awful. This church here has resurrected Jesus behind the altar. This one kind of gives it away because you can kind of see the crucifix. But again, you'll see churches that, heaven forbid, they have the crucifix. They've resurrected Jesus. This one's got brick Jesus. Jesus coming out of the brick. That's the outside. Again, you can't really tell. It's Catholic. It could be anything. It could be megachurch. You'll see a lot of these in Europe, kind of the more modernist architecture. This, I mean, look, am I using is this like 4 right angles? The very modernist look. You can see the modernist architecture of the outside. This one's over in Canada. Okay, we can't have a crucifix, so we gotta just have a cross. Very modernist, right? Stripped down, minimalist look. Outside, again, this could be an art museum for all we know. This is the strange stained glass one. Candles kind of give it away, but again, the idea of the portability and flexibility of the architecture, where you can get these portable chairs out. They don't have permanent pews. Look at this one. This one is even kookier. Look at this. It's got like pop art behind it. It looks like it's pop art. Like Andy Warhol did these. And this one is in the Netherlands. Hey, at least they got candles, but again, just it's cringing. It's very cringy. Another modernist one. The dungeon-looking church. No stained glass, no windows. And some of these are Protestant ones. This one is relatively famous. This is over in St. John's Abbey and in America. And again, just odd, right? What is that? This one I've actually been to. This is the Catholic Charismatic Center in Houston, Texas. Yeah, somebody posted here, oh, Novus Ordo Sect Catholic. The Charismatic Catholic Church in Houston, it's very fascinating. I actually went there for like a year, and they would speak in tongues during Mass, glossolalia. People would jump out into the pews. Now, I mean, of course, I don't know if this has changed, but they would jump out into the aisle and start dancing and speaking in tongues, and somebody on the other side would translate. And look, I'm not going to slam the charismatic movement, because St. Paul talks about in Corinthians that some people do have these fruits. But if you're ever in Houston, you might want to go check that one out. That altar cloth is a little creepy. This is Protestant though. This, God bless my church This is the church I grew up in. This is St. Thomas More in Houston, and they've changed this quite a bit, but it has different seasons on the four major walls. Man of all seasons, right? Thomas More, and so on the back would be fall and winter. This is summer and spring. You can see the keys right here. And interesting, look, you couldn't say this church didn't have enough stained glass. It's just stained glass was a little different. And when I was growing up, they had the crucifix not hanging in the middle. It was over here on the side. It was over here on the side. This is like a mountain. When are we going to get rid of the tapestries? Please, people, it's not the 1970s. Don't need the tapestries anymore. There's nothing wrong with traditional architecture. This one. The Catholic Church in Italy. We always think of Italian churches being classical, not always. I mentioned one of the videos when I was in Venice in October how I got denied the Eucharist because I wanted to take it on the tongue. A lot of it is modernist stuff. This is a Catholic church in Utah. Okay. Very distinctive. The walk-in, almost like jacuzzi baptismal font that some of the newer churches have. Just in case people want to be immersed, though I don't know any Catholic who's ever been immersed. But it's for the Protestants, right? And all this attempt to get the Protestants, we Protestantize the Mass, as Annibale Bonini had mentioned. He wanted to make the Mass, that one of the architects of the Novus Ordo Mass back in the 60s, as an attempt to make it more like Kramer's Mass of the 16th century, the Anglican Mass. He's out on record to say that. So in the attempt that maybe we could get more Protestants to convert, but I don't think it's really been effective. Look at this one. This is actually not Catholic. This one is Catholic. St. Elson, altar in the middle. And again, you can go to the Instagram and see some of these very unique churches. And it's unfortunate that you see churches like this. And I like to think that there is a return to form coming. I do know that the SSPX is building I think their main church in Enunciata, somewhere in Kansas, somewhere if I'm not mistaken. And as expected from the SSPX, it is traditional. And there are churches in the Latin Rite that are, some of them, are returning to the more traditional form of architecture. Now, why is it bad to have modernist architecture? Well, aside from this yearning to return to the traditional forms, I think, like with a lot of things, it edifies and elevates the mind when you have the bells and smells. So when you have incense, when you have this beautiful church, think of the Middle Ages, right? The people would live in hovels, and their ancestors would spend 100, 150 years to build these churches. And they would just rise up into the sky, into the heavens. And you'd go in and you'd have the smells, you'd have the candles, the beautiful stained glass. They would use the stained glass in the paintings to teach, to catechize. And you felt like you were entering a sacred space, and then it would lend to better, I don't want to say better worship, but you could focus your worship. And you juxtapose that with churches that are the opposite, where they have the pop music, the secular music, even though in Musica Sacrum, which was one of the Vatican II documents, it said that we should still adhere to traditional music. But a lot of places didn't. Most of the places you probably grew up with went to the pop rock, piano, and so forth. So you have this kind of poppy music. You have these churches in the interior that just they got rid of a lot of the things that were lofty and edifying to our faith, like the stained glass. They moved the tabernacle out. They brought in the resurrected Jesus and things like this. And that takes away from Mass, that takes away from the sacred space. So we pray that, like a lot of things, this was a phase, the last 40 years, 50 years of church architecture, and that we do return to the basilica form. We do return to putting the tabernacle back in the church. And you do see some churches doing that. You see some churches that maybe had a more modernist pastor, and then the pastor retires or dies, and the next pastor comes in and brings back the tabernacle and puts the choir instead of in the front left. And essentially we applaud for what they do. They put them in the back or up in the choir loft where they were supposed to be and where they've been forever. So you do see changes and movements in the architecture. But I would recommend that if you're interested in church architecture and what happened, exactly why did we abandon essentially 1,600 years of architecture that was done a certain way to this more modernist one, I'd recommend you check out Michael S. Rose's Ugly as Sin. That's the name of the book. Maybe it's at a public library. Maybe you can enter a library and loan it. Certainly it's on Amazon if you want more of a background on that. Guys, that's all I got today. I will talk to you next time. Take care.